Absolutely nothing beats windshield time. Welcome back to Dan the Road Trip Guy, a podcast where we have candid conversations about life lessons learned on the road. I'm your host, Bimmer enthusiast and road trip extraordinaire, Dan Neal. And now, on to the show. My guest today is Jeff Molski. Jeff and I have known each other through our children. They went to school together. It's an interesting conversation today. Usually I'm in a car maybe, or I'm in a remote place away from my guests. But today I get to sit in, I think I've stepped back in time actually. I'm back in the 50s and 60s because that's what Jeff does. Jeff spent about 30 years in the business world. Then he took his passion, which is clear to me, just sitting here chatting with him a little bit before the show, and he is now in the mid-century business. And it's not just furniture. It's stuff from the mid-centuries, the 50s and 60s. So I'm excited to talk to Jeff and just hear about everything he does here. So welcome to the show, Jeff.
Dan, thanks for having me. I'm glad you were able to come by my shop today. And you're right. In this particular room we're in, people will say they come in here and they sit down and they said, "This reminds me of my grandparents' living room."
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, this is the most amazing thing I've seen in a while. I like to start the show with if you're out on the street and you got 2 minutes to tell somebody just who is Jeff Molski, what would you say? You only got 2 minutes, so go.
2 minutes. Okay. I was born in Detroit. Raised in the Chicago area, went to school at Miami University, graduated in 1986, and I ended up staying here in Cincinnati since then. So I've been here, 35, 36 years now. Loved every minute of it. Met my wife at Miami University. She was from the Cincinnati area at the time, so that's kind of what attracted me here to Cincinnati. And we raised 3 children. They're all adults now, 31, 27, 24. We're fortunate to have them here in Cincinnati with us right now, so we enjoy that while we can, because we know that's probably not always going to be the story. And I was in the corporate world for almost 30 years out of school. I spent most of that time in the healthcare field doing sales, marketing, some operations. I kind of started doing this deal about 7 years ago now, just as a weekend hobby in my garage here in Marymount where we live. And it's grown and grown and grown. And I will probably get into a little more details about that, but it's been almost 7 years now and I love every day.
Yeah. Yeah, I should have said my wife and I walk the neighborhood a lot, and we used to walk by Saturday mornings. We'd walk by Jeff's house, garage doors up, and he's working on a piece of furniture. We really had no idea what he was doing, and it's and we're going to talk a lot about that. But it's gone from that garage to 4,000 square feet.
That's what I have now, about 4,000 feet. But so in the beginning, I was somewhat limited. My wife gave me half the garage because she had to be able to park her car in the garage. And I know you talk about a lot about cars. Thankfully, she had a Mini Cooper. Yeah. So I got a little bit more than half the garage as my workspace.
That's great.
To get started.
Hey, you came to Miami. What brought you from Chicago to Miami University?
Interestingly enough, I had an older brother that was a pretty good high school football player that was being recruited by a couple universities to come and play football. And Miami University was one of them. He ended up going to Miami. He actually didn't end up playing football. He was in a car accident his senior year of high school that he had some leg damage that prevented him from getting back on the field, but he still went to Miami. So when I started looking at colleges, I had kind of like a checklist, mid-sized school, Midwest, fairly close to Chicago. And the more schools they got crossed off, Miami kept getting higher and higher, on the list. Yeah. And I swore I wouldn't go to the same school as my brother, but that's where I ended up.
Yeah.
And plus their business school was outstanding. And that's what I majored in. So.
Yeah. One of my questions I always like to ask is, what was your first car? And you shared a little bit with me that you kind of shared that with your older brother. But what was that first car?
Our first car. I didn't have my first car. My brother being just 13 months older than he and I shared a lot of things, including a car. It would have been probably 1979. My parents bought him a Pontiac Le Mans. I still remember it was a 2-door silver, red interior. I do think it had an 8-track player in it.
Yeah, nice.
So it was fully loaded, I guess, as you say. So that was kind of my first car. My brother and I shared it once I turned 16.
Yeah, sure.
So we would, take that to school, and we were able to drive to school and, drive around. So yeah, that was our first car.
Now, was that a cloth red interior or was that leather?
No, it was leather. It was leather because I know it would get hot.
Yeah.
it would get hot and sticky.
Yeah. That's great. Since you got in this business, we were talking earlier, you not only do furniture and things from mid-century, and we'll talk more about that, but let's talk more about cars, because you've also bought some mid-century cars.
I do. I really like vintage cars. And as I told you before, fortunately, I do not know anything mechanically about these cars, so I'm not able to work on them.
Yeah.
So if I do purchase one, and I always purchase them with the intent of reselling, but what I typically do is I'll look for cars in the springtime when the weather starts getting nice. If I find something, I'll buy it and I'll drive it for a few months into the summer, and then I'll sell it. So I've done that 3 times since I've been doing this. The last 3 summers, I'll buy 1 car a year. Fortunately, I don't have to really do much to them. Mm-hmm. Little tweaks here and there, but for the most part, they're everyday drivers. And my wife just hates it when she hears I buy a car, because of the fact that I can't work on them. And she's like, well, what if something goes wrong? What if something goes wrong? It's going to be a money pit. So I've been careful. I've been lucky, knock on wood.
Sure.
3 cars so far, no major things with it. I've been able to, like I said, buy them, drive them for a few months, even took them in a couple of different parades and events with them. And It's fun to go to car shows with them. And then I sell them, because in my business, I just don't get attached to things.
Sure.
That's, that grows from what I do here with the furniture and all the items from the 50s and 60s. People ask me, don't you want to keep everything? And it's like, well, I've kind of gotten beyond that, because I know I can't.
Yeah.
And I just, I have so many things that I purchase and, refurbish and resell. I've got more stuff coming in, so I need to get the stuff I currently have. I have to get it out.
Sure.
So with the cars, same thing. Would I like to keep them? Sure. If I knew how to work on cars, and because they're fun, they're really fun.
Which one out of those 3 was your favorite?
Boy, the 2. So real quickly, the 3 cars I had a 62 Chevy 2, which became the Nova in 63, because when Chevy made that car in 62, the marketing geniuses didn't have a name for it yet. So they came up with Nova, which means no-go in Spanish, and that became the Nova. That car was fun. Then I had a 1968 Dodge A100 10-passenger van that was really fun to drive, and maybe that's for another episode, but that one I actually bought from the guys from American Pickers.
Okay.
So I formed a relationship with them, basically because I bought a car from them, but really, really fun to deal with. They help me when I'm looking at other vehicles to purchase. But the last one I had was a pickup truck. It was a 64 40 Econoline pickup truck, and it was fun. It was really fun. I've learned, when I buy these, I don't know a whole lot about them, but I learn as I go. And, this one was what they call the 5-window model. The original ones only had 3 windows. And what I learned about that was the 2 additional windows were in the back corners of the cab, which allowed you to see, who's coming up on side, because there were no side view mirrors on these.
Yeah.
So you could not see if somebody was coming up on your left or your right, so it was a little dangerous. You literally had to stick your head out the window to see if somebody was coming. So the 5 windows were a big improvement. That one was kind of like an off red color. It was just a fun little truck. And I just, somebody approached me on it if I'd sell it, and Dan, everything's for sale.
Yeah. Everything's got a price. Right?
And, we made a deal on it, and away it went.
Yeah.
So
that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, let's talk about this. Mm-hmm. I can tell you're extremely passionate about this. Mm-hmm. The mid-century, is that because you just love that time period and the things that come out of that time period?
Yeah, I think for me, it's the style that attracted me to it. It's a very simple design. It's not ornate. A lot of the antique furniture from the 30s and 40s are very ornate pieces with detailed carvings and very intricate, patterns to them. This is fairly simple. So what attracted to me was, it's easy to refinish pieces. There's not a lot of, quote, detail work on it. I mean, like little details. Everything is pretty much straightforward, but it's also so well built. Our oldest son and his wife have a lot of mid-century modern style furniture that's brand new, and you could just see the craftsmanship's just not there.
Sure.
I mean, the pieces that I'm restoring, so you put numbers to it, they're a good 60 years old.
Right.
And they're still structurally intact. A lot of the restoration work I do is just cosmetic work.
Okay.
It needs to be refinished. Maybe there's a couple loose things here and there, but for the most part, it's cosmetic. And I just like the look of it. It goes with everything, because people ask me, what are you going to do when it goes out of style? I'm like, I don't think it ever is, because it's so versatile. I mean, you see this kind of furniture in uber contemporary homes, you'll see mid-century modern furniture. And I'm always looking, I look online, I look on TV programs, and half the time, because people have asked me if I've ever seen the show Mad Men. You get a lot of comments. I've never seen it.
Yeah.
I've never seen it. I need to watch it.
I've seen a couple episodes. This would fit really well.
Right. Well, when I tell people it's the problem I have with watching that show is I'd be so entranced and looking at all the furniture and decoration, I wouldn't pay attention to the show line.
Yeah, for sure.
I wouldn't know what was going on because I'm like, oh, I know what that table is.
Yeah.
And I do that now. Like, I even tell my wife, oh, see that lamp in the background? I've had one of those. That's a such and such lamp.
That's really cool.
But it's fun. I like the style. People ask me if I grew up with this. I didn't. My parents, we talked earlier about my parents. My father's been in the insurance business for his whole career. We didn't have anything cool like this. Everything was traditional. Very traditional sofa and furniture and tables. So I think, part of this is stuff I missed out growing up on. I'm just kind of catching up on not having this, growing up.
Yeah.
So it's kind of fun.
Yeah, that's fun. I mean, you were in the business world and then all of a sudden you said, hey, I think I know what I'm going to do. Today they call them side hustles.
Yeah.
Back then, maybe it was a hobby for you.
Right.
Did you do it to furnish your own house, or you had this grand vision in your mind that someday I'm going to make this a business?
Yeah.
And you are a businessman today. You're an entrepreneur. Right.
Yeah, I did. I think when I got into it, that wasn't the plan. When I first got into it, it was just something to do on the weekends. When our kids were grown, I didn't have to go to any more soccer games or basketball games. So I was looking for things to do on the weekends primarily. And it all started with one chair. Our daughter was in Goodwill shopping for some vintage clothing. I saw a cool mid-century chair there. It was $5, but it needed some work on the wood part. And I said, I'll do that. That'd be a fun little project this weekend. So I bought it, took it home, restored it. I put it on, I believe, Craigslist and sold it like that day for a decent profit. And I said, there might be something to this. And I enjoyed it. And I did it because, I enjoyed doing it. I love seeing the end results. And it just grew and grew and grew from there to the point after, and I would call it my side hustle.
Yep.
After about 3.5 years, I sat my wife down and we had a couple conversations of what I was thinking about doing. It wasn't easy, but I said, look, I'm not that far away from being able to do this full time. And I can guarantee you that I will not fail at this. Mm-hmm. I'm going to make it work. It's going to be a success. That was another three, since I've been doing this a little over 6 years, that was 3.5 years ago. I took this to a full-time job and I've never looked back.
Yeah.
I've never looked back.
Yeah.
I think one more thing is one of the things my father taught me, because he has dealt with a lot of small business owners. He said, I can tell you the one thing right away that sets people apart from the ones that succeed in small business and the ones that fail. I said, okay, what is that? He goes, the ones that succeed don't have a fallback plan. The ones that fail are the ones that say, you know what? If this doesn't work out, I can always do B.
Yeah.
Because the ones that succeed aren't thinking about B because they know they're going to make it work.
Yeah.
And that's the way I felt from the beginning. I've never had a fallback plan.
Yeah.
Like if this failed, I don't know what I was going to do because I never even thought about it.
Guess I'm going back to work, right?
Yeah. I'm going to have to go back to the corporate world. But it's never even once crossed my mind that, if this doesn't work. And hopefully you can tell I love it.
Yeah.
Every day.
No,
every day I love it.
Extremely passionate the minute I walked in here. Is there one piece as you look back over these past few years, is there one particular piece that jumps out at you that you just, you were just thrilled to get and maybe refinish and put back out there in the world for somebody to enjoy?
Yeah, I get asked that a lot. And it's almost my standard stock reply is like children. Like you don't have a favorite child. Sure. Even though you do, you're not going to admit it.
Yeah.
I just love, to me, is the thrill of finding different pieces all the time. I find so many unique pieces, so many things that are different. Now I have favorite designers. I have favorite, lines that I look for. One of my favorite mid-century designers, Paul McCobb.
Okay.
His furniture is very desirable. It's fairly hard to find, but it's so well made and it's so stylish. When I see it, I know what it is. Because a lot of times when I'll see things, I don't know what it is, like who the designer was, where it came from, but I don't care because now I think I've got a good enough eye where I know what's going to be desirable. And I don't always know. I just typically go by the look. But favorite pieces, I just love variety.
Yeah.
And I think you can tell from being
Well, yeah,
here.
you can see that here.
It's not just tables or couches or paintings. It's, I've got a little bit of everything, as we talked about, all the way up to cars.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sorry this is a podcast and people can't see this because this is really amazing. Well, when you're looking for items, you're scouring the internet, I guess, or how far away do you go? I mean, do you try to stay within a radius?
Yeah, I
of
used
Cincinnati,
to initially when I started doing this, just because I wasn't, well versed on how to source, these items. I would travel maybe about a 5-hour radius. I'd go to Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Louisville. Now that I'm able to find so many things, in this general area, I don't travel much more than like 2 hours one way. And that's just because, I know how to find things. If somebody's selling something that I've found online, they probably have more. That might just be part of a grandparent's house or a parent's house
Sure.
they're looking to clean out. And then probably now maybe about 30% of the items I buy are from people that reach out to me directly with that story that they're clearing out a house and they want to know if I want to come over and take a look. And of course, I'm always, willing and able to come look around and see what's there. I love garages. I love basements. It's just fun going into these old houses and interacting with these people and hearing their stories.
Yeah, it was so fun. A few years ago, we were in Phoenix. We rented an Airbnb there, and there's this, I don't know what you call it, but a cabinet stereo.
Oh, yeah.
Had an 8-track, had the record player, radio, and all that, and 2 speakers on the front. And my parents had one that was identical.
Yeah.
When I was growing up, probably in the 60s, more 70s. My mom had gotten rid of hers, and I was like, man, I'd like to have that back. And, it was working, and it was just kind of really cool.
I hear a lot of that. People are like, boy, I wish we would have kept this. And when they see things like this, when they come here, they're like, oh, my parents had this. I wish we would have kept it. But you just don't know.
No.
One, you don't know if it's going to be something that you might use down the road. 2, you don't have the space.
Yeah.
You don't have a warehouse somewhere where you can keep everything. And I asked my dad that about a similar question, and we'll go back to the car thing because, again, like I said, they've never had anything, quote, what I consider cool growing up. He had the station wagon. He had some Ford, company cars, but he did have a 1964 and a half Mustang convertible.
Okay.
Was the one thing that he wished he would have kept. He's like, why did I sell that? And I answer him, it's because you had 3 kids.
Yeah.
That's not a practical family car with five people in the family. But that was the one regret he has as far as things he didn't keep and I still remember it was red. I think it had the white roof on it, but it was the 64 and a half. Wow. Convertible, and he's like, he kicks himself every day.
Yeah, that's usually when I talk to people, it's like, okay, and you kept that car, right? And people are like, no, I wish I had.
Yeah, so, in my 10-car garage.
Exactly.
Right?
Well, and you talk about putting stuff in storage, and you don't get to enjoy it. If you aren't going to hang on to something, give it to somebody else that
so they can enjoy it.
You can refinish it, and somebody else can enjoy it.
And you mentioned one thing that I sell quite a number of are the old stereo cabinets with the radios and the turntables, because vinyl is so incredibly popular right now. Yeah. And it's been for the last few years. I think maybe 2 years ago, albums outsold CDs for the first time ever.
That's crazy.
And it's just crazy. Some of the albums, the collections that people have had, the largest, and maybe, someone has more, but I doubt it. The largest collection I've seen so far, I went to a gentleman's house to buy some things, and I could tell he had a lot of audio equipment. And I asked him about album collection. He said, yeah, I do. I said, I'm afraid to ask. He had just over 10,000 albums in his collection.
Wow.
That's a lot of albums. I said, there's no way you can listen to all these. He goes, I just collect. So there's a lot. So I get a lot of requests for stereo cabinets.
I bet.
With the working turntables, because nothing really matches that sound.
Yeah.
That original, that vinyl sound, that needle hitting the vinyl, that little scratchiness, and then it comes in clear. It's really, really fun.
Yeah, that is fun. So you shop kind of locally. I'm assuming people are finding you all around the country now and purchasing your products.
Yeah, my customer base is, all across the country. I'll ship anywhere. I have kind of a network of shippers that I use. I've shipped everywhere from Maine to California, all across the country. People find you on my Instagram account. That's where they find me. Hopefully they understand and they can see through my portfolio on there the kind of work I do on products. I'm not selling anything that I wouldn't put in my own house.
Yeah.
So know the quality is going to be there. They know that if it's been refinished, it's got that professional look to it. We're sitting at a table right at this coffee table I refinished that we're sitting at.
It
looks like it's brand new.
Yeah, it does.
It was a little rough when I got it, but this is, what I do. I mean, I love to bring it back to what it looked like when mom and dad brought it home from the furniture store.
Yeah, and that's a super cool chair.
Yeah.
I assume that maybe that was an office chair, you think?
Probably, like in a waiting room.
Yeah.
Waiting room.
Yeah.
I just like finding unique pieces, something that, a lot of my pieces are pretty rare, and I probably don't know at the time when I buy them. Like I'll see it and I'm like, oh, I haven't seen that before. Yeah. And then I'll get home and I'll do some research and I'm like, oh, I think I've only been able to find one other one. This is probably pretty rare.
Yeah.
But that's not what attracts me to it. It's the style that I gravitate towards.
Is there, so we talked about a favorite item, but is there something you got your eye, you're just looking for out there? Is there one particular thing?
You know what? I mentioned Paul McCobb. I'm always looking for Paul McCobb pieces just because they are, so popular. A lot of people looking for it. I've got a couple little things. I had kind of the white elephant. I don't have it here. It's one piece that I have at home. It's a rotary clock. But when I say clock, it basically sits on a table and it's got maybe like a 10-inch high lampshade that's got the numbers, 12 through, the clock numbers on the bottom of it. And it's got a pin that'll tell you what time it is. And the lampshade actually rotates itself. And where that arrow or the pin is pointing up, that's what time it is. And there's a light inside of it too, and it lights up.
Yeah.
And I saw it somewhere online. I'm like, just for some reason, I go, that's one of the coolest things I've ever seen if it works. And I found one.
Yeah.
Literally like a couple months later.
Yeah. These designers you talked about, was most of this furniture American made?
Yeah.
So.
A lot of it was in Virginia, Michigan, mostly, the Midwest and East, where a lot of it was made, Pennsylvania. So I think that's why I'm able to find a lot of it in this area. And again, a lot of homes I go into, I hear this over and over again. Mom and dad got this bedroom set when they got married.
Wow.
In the 60s, and they still have it.
Yeah.
They got this dining room set in the 60s when they first got married, and they still have it.
Yeah.
People took care of things.
Yeah.
They really did.
Would these have been considered high-end purchases back then?
Some of them are. Obviously, like anything else, you've got a high end, a middle tier, and a lower tier. Mm-hmm. Most of them are kind of mid to high end.
Okay.
Furniture makers. The Lane Furniture of the world, Broyhill. And then I mentioned Paul McCobb. He designed for a company called Whitacombe out of Grand Rapids. Herman Miller is a name that's still around.
Yeah.
They've made chairs and other pieces forever, very collectible. Yeah, there are a lot of good stuff. Like I said, the quality is just unmatched. Yeah. The days of craftsmanship, unfortunately, have kind of gone away. We're into mass production now.
Mass production.
But when you look at some of these pieces and you really look into the details of, how it was made and some of the interesting features, it's like, well, why would they do that? It's like, that takes a lot of time to incorporate that into the design. I'm like, because they could and they wanted to. Yeah. They wanted to show off. Yeah. Craftsman wanted to show his skills off.
Well, it's all handmade.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And they wanted to challenge themselves.
Interesting. We talked a little bit about experiences, and one thing I like to ask is, I typically ask if you could go on a road trip with anyone. We talked a little bit about road trips, and road trips, maybe not your thing totally, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Do share a road trip. You shared a road trip that you went down to Louisville to pick up something, and you want to get there fast because it's about the destination getting there. Yeah. But coming back.
Sure. Yeah. One thing I always do, and I've always done this, like if I'm going to, a city where it's highway road on the way there, I always take the shortest route to get there, obviously, so I can get there, make my purchases, and then enjoy the journey on the way back. And when I come back, I always take the back roads. Yeah. I never get on the highway. That's where you find, some of the neatest things, some of the coolest things, some of the stuff that we talked about American Pickers, that show where you see these guys roll up on a property that's just got stuff everywhere. It looks like they might be having a everyday yard sale out in the front yard because there's so much stuff out there. I mean, I love stuff like that. And I'll just pull up and I love talking to people. And that's where you find things. Yeah. I'm not going to find any of these cool places driving along I-75, but I will if, I go to Dayton a lot. And when I come back from Dayton, I always go the back roads.
Okay.
And you just never know what you're going to find. And you can have I've got a pretty good idea of if that particular property might have excess inventory, as I'll call it. If they have a hoarding problem, maybe is another thing. And I'm just, I'm here to help.
Yeah.
I'm here to help, get rid of some of your stuff. But that's what I enjoy doing as far as like road trips. Yeah, I always take the direct route on the way there. On the way back, I make sure I take the scenic journey. And I love going through little towns, all these little towns. A lot of times I'll have like a little antique store, a little thrift store. Of course, I always stop and go in. Yeah. Because you never know what you're going to find.
Yeah. If you drive by a house and you see something really cool sitting out there, and it could be a car even.
You see a gas pump.
If there's a gas pump. Yeah, that's a tip off, right? Do you just swing in there?
I do. If it looks, I'm not, I'm careful.
Yeah.
If I see a pack of pit bulls out in the front yard, I'm not going to stop.
Yeah.
But, if it looks like, something that, they could be open to knock on the door, I'll do that.
Yeah.
And, what's the worst that can happen? They can say, get off my property, and I'll, kindly say, well, I'm sorry to bother you, and head on back down the road.
Yeah, just trying to help you.
Yeah.
Yeah. You could sit down for lunch or dinner with anyone, living or deceased. Who would it be?
You know what? And I know this, you probably think I'm going to mention Frank Sinatra. Frank Sinatra would be a great answer because I love Frank. I've got a whole collection of Frank albums for myself. Backup would be Frank Sinatra, but I think as far as somebody that I grew up watching and admiring and still would be Michael Jordan.
Oh, yes.
I mean, probably, he is, and I get in this discussion frequently with my boys, he is the best basketball player of all time.
Yes.
Hands down. I don't care what anybody says about LeBron and Kobe and all this. He's single-handedly won them X number of championships. I can't remember what they did, 6 or 7. The number of MVP awards he has. But I would just love to hear his story from him. And that's why I'd love to have lunch from him. I don't want to hear it from a third party. I would love to see what he did to prepare for that because I believe, if I'm correct, he was cut from his high school basketball team.
I believe he was.
He was cut. It's like, okay, what's your motivation? What drives you? Like, what made you keep going and not just give up and move on to something else? Yeah. And then once you get to that certain level, what keeps you at that level? Because it's tough to get to that pinnacle, but it's even tougher to stay there because then everybody's gunning for you.
Yeah.
And he was able to do it and sustain it. So I think it'd be Michael Jordan. I think that'd be fun.
Yeah. I assume since you're from Chicago, you saw him play.
I grew up going to games and watching him play. The only thing I wouldn't do is play golf with him because I hear he's a very big gambler and I don't like gambling. So for me, that might be a problem.
Yeah, that could be a problem.
I'd still like to play golf with him. But it would be Michael Jordan.
Yeah. 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 I remember once we were up in Chicago and we were up to look at a car up in north. We went north. And I guess his house was up there. And so we did drive by it. There's this huge gate with 23 on the gate. 23 on the gate. And I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool. And I did get to see him play in Indianapolis after he had retired and came back.
Oh, okay.
And that,
after his baseball career
went south, it was kind of a bucket list thing. I always said, my buddy and I, we drove up there and we bought tickets on the street. Yeah. We were like 6 rows back and he was still performing at the top of the game. That's what I'd love to hear his story, like how he stayed at that level for so long. Yeah.
Like how he stayed, that effective and, the best of the best. But he'd probably be a good guy for you to have on your show. He's probably got some nice cars, I would imagine.
Yeah. Yeah. It's hard to get people to call Dan the road trip guy.
Right.
So
stick with it.
I stick with it.
Never say never.
Never say never. That's right.
I'll put in a good word for you when we have lunch.
There you go. Yeah, that'd be great. We'll wrap up this session, but I think we'll have a part 2 at some point.
I'd love to
talk more about.
I'd love to. I've got a lot of stories.
This is kind of the intro. The intro. I wanted people to meet you through this podcast, but anyway, as we wrap up. I like to give people an opportunity. You got all this stuff here. How do people find you? How do they buy something from you? Whatever you want to promote.
Basically, it's easy. It's the one way. The best way is through Instagram. If you're not on Instagram, you should be. I'm 58 years old. I'll be 59 in a couple weeks. My kids think it's the funniest thing ever, the coolest thing ever that they've got a dad that's got over 12,000 followers on Instagram. And it's just little old me.
Yeah.
I've done everything myself. I've built the page. I've done everything, all the social media, the marketing. Now they've helped and offered suggestions.
Sure.
But so the best way is to get on Instagram and all you have to do is start typing in mid-century modern rescue. And before you even get to the word rescue, my page will probably pop up and you just click on that and give me a follow.
Yeah. So that's the only place you are, really.
Yeah, I have a website, but I don't keep up with it just because typically my things sell so fast.
Yeah.
By the time I put them on my website, if they've been on my Instagram page, they're probably already sold.
Yeah.
So for now, it's just Instagram.
Yeah. Did you start Instagram when you started the business?
Maybe a year or two afterwards. So I've had an Instagram page now for maybe about 4 years.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's like I said, it's grown and grown and grown. It's been fun.
So if you had to give one piece of advice to somebody, because you're very passionate, if you had to give a piece of advice to somebody who maybe has that side hustle, they've still got a job, what do you tell them?
Do it. Get started.
Yeah.
There's a million reasons you'll find reasons not to do it. Yeah. But all you need, if it's your passion, that's the reason to do it.
Yeah.
If you're passionate about something, do it.
Yeah.
What's the worst thing that could possibly happen? It doesn't work out for you, but you had a good time doing it, but just follow your passion. Yeah. Find what it is.
Great. Hey, Jeff, I appreciate your time.
Good. Thanks, Dan.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming by.
All right.
Appreciate it.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Dan the Road Trip Guy, and we look forward to having you back again next time. In the meantime, if you want to find me, you can find me on the internet at Danny, D-A-N-N-Y, Neal, Neal.com. Until we meet up again, keep having conversations and keep driving.